Welcome to the very first UFO webcast. My today's guest is going to be Donna Lynn. She has been a longtime ET contactee and has written a book called From Fear to Love. Some of you have submitted some questions for me to ask Donna today, and without any further ado, here she is. Hi, Donna. How are you? Thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it.
Hi, I'm doing well, thanks, and I appreciate you asking me.
Yeah, I'm excited that you were able to respond and be one of the first ones to be on the very first UFO Hub webcast. So I'm certainly excited, and we have quite a few questions for it being the very first one. We have about 10 questions or so. So I
Great.
figured you and I have talked on camera, off camera many
hmm
times. So now guess I'm handing the mic over to some other voices. So I figured I'll just start with the first question and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So this first person, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce the name, is Gidget, and they were having a bit difficulty submitting the questions on the regular forum, so they emailed it. So I don't know where they're from. I'll probably
Mm,
have a city and state for the others. But
Okay.
the question was, I'm just very curious if there have ever been abductions, experiments, harvesting, etc., on other races other than white one. Are they themselves creating a new world order with only a supreme race?
Oh, no, I don't get that impression at all. In fact, in the very first opening chapter of my book, I described sitting in one of the rooms after having been taken and kind of waiting for them to do whatever they're going to do with us. And I look around the room and I see all ages and races and people of different old people, young people, even little kids, which that really upsets me. But no, I've seen people of different races, but for some reason it seems like it's mostly us white people that come out and talk about it and do the conferences. And um, people that have contacted me have been like from Germany and Australia. So I don't understand about that, although I do understand the Native American people. They claim that they're star nations, that their ancestors came from the stars. Specifically, the Lakota talk about that. Um, but yes, it is interesting that there aren't more people that come forward that are of color. So, but I don't get the impression at all that the aliens want to create some kind of white supremacy race or anything. They're very all encompassing, and they love everybody, and they always encourage me to look past the differences and to appreciate each individual person for who they are as an individual regarding their, despite their age or their differences that they might have with me with politics or religion or anything like that. They treasure each one of us as an individual, as far as I've been able to understand.
I think this is the first time I had a question to ask somebody this, but usually on in comments and other emails I get on the channel, there have
Mhm.
been several questions. If there were any other races other than white. But yeah,
Oh,
I don't know. I don't know why it just turns out that way. And I don't think that there's this great conspiracy either.
no, I don't get that impression at all. And also, the Maori people, I believe, of the South Pacific, they go back generations talking about the dream time, which they believe is a reality just as real as this reality, which is basically what I've been saying too. The experiences I have are just as real as this reality we have right here. And I haven't really read a whole lot about them, but I do know that that's one of their beliefs, or it was in old times.
Okay. Well, I'm going to move forward with the bigger, longer questions here.
Okay.
Here's one from Rick, St. Louis, Missouri. Asks, have the aliens explained why it is that people who are not caretakers of the earth rise to power and maintain control over those of us who do want to take care of the earth? Why is it that seemingly ill-willed, intended people run things?
That's a really good question, and I have wondered that a lot myself too, because it's kind of like the old Bible quote, "The meek shall inherit the earth," and it's like, well, when? Because the people that are vicious and cruel and self-centered seem to be the ones in charge, and they're destroying the earth and ruining things. And I don't really have a direct answer about that. It is something I've wondered, and it's obvious for those of us that look at it that it's happening that way. And I don't know if it's because we are supposed to be gaining strength, getting together, and overcoming those people. Um, yeah, I don't really have a specific answer for that. Sorry.
Okay. Here's one from Michelle, Houston, Texas. She asks, since they speak to you telepathically, do you use that in your everyday life? If so, what can I do to improve my telepathy?
Yes, it's actually become kind of a part of my everyday life. If I'm doing dishes, I might get a message in my ear, or it used to be only when I was asleep that they would approach me, but now that I've been able to recognize them and acknowledge them and work with them, now they, can come to me at any time and speak to me telepathically. And yes, sometimes, they help. They might say, go to this one place, and I'll go there and I'll meet someone that wants to talk to me about aliens or something. So they are watching over. But as far as you being able to do that, the best thing is to work on things like meditation. There's great YouTube videos where you can have guided meditations to get to learn to be deeper into yourself and to learn to get in touch with your inner self. And the main thing too is just to trust your gut instincts, because for so many years I would get a gut instinct to do something or not do something, and I would ignore it and find out later that I should have done it, that it was correct. And so now when I get a gut instinct for something, I do it if I possibly can. And that's another way, either they're connecting with us or speaking with us when they connect with those gut instincts. Trust yourself, trust your own instincts, and ask for signs. You can ask for signs because they do value our free will, so they won't impose themselves on you. So you ask either out loud or in your mind, say, please come talk to me, and ask them questions. Sometimes they answer, sometimes they don't. Sometimes the answer comes in the form of a book or a movie or a conversation you overhear. It might come in different means, not always just a telepathic answer in your ear. But the more you pay attention and the more you ask and ask for signs and focus on going within at least one time a day, even just for 5 minutes, that should help with your perception of understanding them.
Just that one quick follow up question, especially for some of those that I guess are new to this field in general, and would, for example, say, you know, I would assume they could ask things like, how do you know the difference that what's in your mind and what's an idea as opposed to a message being given to you from them?
That's a really good one, too. For the longest time, I thought I was just talking to myself, because sometimes it does come in your own voice. Sometimes it comes in a different voice. But um, after a while, you realize it's something that comes to you that you would not have thought of. Or, like I gave the example when I was asked to speak at the last UFO conference, I was waiting for them to send me a message for what to write about or what to talk about. And it didn't come and it didn't come. And I was one day in my kitchen saying, when are you going to give me a message, something to write about? And I heard very, very clearly in my right ear a male voice that was not my own. And it said, we do not yet know who will be in attendance. And for one thing, I don't talk that way. It's kind of a stilted English. So they often talk like in a very old-fashioned kind of manner, and they might use words that you wouldn't normally use, or a thought that you wouldn't. I would never have had that thought that I was waiting to see who would be attending. I was more focused on what I was going to say. So if it's something that isn't normally your mode of thinking or something you would have thought about or presented to you in a way that your brain normally thinks, that's a good indication that it's coming from elsewhere. And again, you can ask for a sign. I still do, even after all these years. I ask for signs a lot, and then they come to you in the form of synchronicity. You'll see 11:11 on the clock, or you'll hear a line in a movie that you just know that clicked or something like that.
Here's a question that from Ryan. He's in Chicago, Illinois, and it's I guess in a way you have answered this question, but in a I guess inadvertent way. The question was, how do you come into contact with experiencers locally? Also, can non-experiencers learn to invite visitations?
Yes. In fact, that's one of the big messages the aliens have given me in the last 5 years is that they want to reach out to more and more and more people. So they want, they've reached some of us woo-woo people that have been talking about aliens and UFOs, but now they want to reach even a wider expanse of people, maybe with more different backgrounds and different experiences, because each one of us filters, we get the messages, and then it filters through our experience, our education level, our expectations, and then we translate it into this reality and talk about it. So someone who has a completely different background than me might get basically the same message, but might interpret it differently in a better way, maybe. So they do want more people. And if you've never had contact, like I said, they very much honor our free will. So they want you to ask. They'd like you to ask because they don't want to invade, which kind of goes contrary to a lot of the abduction stories. But I've come to learn that those of us that were abducted seemingly against our will, there was a soul agreement way back, probably before birth. So they do honor free will. And if you ask them, hopefully they will come. And I'm so local, meeting local people. I really haven't. And I'm in Southern California, where you'd think there would be a lot of, people with this kind of experience. But when I lived in Florida, I met some. It was surprising. It was much more spiritual there. And the main places are metaphysical bookstores and rock shops where they sell crystals, and those kind of places where, people are already looking into the supernatural or the mysterious or astrology or things that are just a little
Right.
unusual. And that's usually a good way to meet like-minded people. And even if they don't know someone, they usually have a bulletin board or something where you could put up a notice. So that seems like the best way to meet people. That's how I met people in the past.
Yeah, I remember when I was first looking for somebody in St. Louis, and it was it was so spoken in such a hush hush tones. So it's like, do you know
Hmm.
somebody? People beating about, talking about aliens and ghosts and stuff. And it
Yeah.
turns out St. Louis, has many groups there. But for someone who's new, it's like there's no shortage. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, but it's still kind of a little taboo in society. So it's like you don't go out and say, "Hey, who wants to talk about aliens?" Because people are afraid to, or afraid of the stigma. But it's just surprising, and the people that you do meet are not the ones you'd expect. They look like, they don't look unusual or weird or anything. They're just
Right.
regular people.
Okay, I got another question. This is from Beth, maybe Richmond, Virginia. The question is: are there malevolent aliens that visit Earth? Are they in our universe?
For the longest time, I didn't want to believe that because the ones I'm in contact with are so wonderful and so benevolent and loving and healing. And, have never given me any indication of being bad, never told me to hurt anybody or hurt myself or do anything against my morals. But in reality, when you look around at the world today and things that are going on, and I didn't really want to buy into that whole, those in the UFO community who say that reptilians are controlling the government and that I was like, no, 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 that's not right. But the way the world is today, I kind of think I have to accept that if there are such positive and benevolent aliens, there probably are others that aren't so good and that are maybe possibly working with the people in our world who aren't so good. But that's why I'm a Christian, so if I have a contact that I don't know, I'm not unfamiliar with, I always say, if you come in the name of Jesus, I welcome you. If you do not, I demand that you leave. And I say that 3 times. And I don't know if that's just a superstition, but only one time did I have a presence come to me that was unfamiliar. And I said that, and it just immediately disappeared and never came back. So, that's for a Christian. It would work for people of other faiths. I'm sure if you come for the highest and best good of all, I welcome you. If you do not, I demand that you leave, because we do have the free will. So you have the free will to send them away if you sense that they're not good. But I only had that happen one time in all the thousands of times that I've been approached. So, and another thing is, if you keep your own mind as positive, do good for others, pick up trash, be kind to the homeless person on the street, try to keep yourself elevated with the meditation. Again, that raises your vibration a little, and focus on things that are positive. Try to stay away from negative, toxic people as much as you can. Then you will attract more positive entities towards you, like attracts like. So that's a big part of it too, trying to stay positive and focus on what's good in the world and what's beautiful, the beautiful sunsets, the things like that. And that will attract to you the more positive and benevolent beings.
Quick question: Did you ever find um, did you ever find that, for example, like you said you're Christian, and did you ever find that having these experiences, and then I'm sure also being exposed more to quote unquote, I guess for lack of a better word, these new age terms about things, did you ever find a great
Mm-hmm.
conflict there, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, I did. I had a real hard time. My sister's really into the New Age movement, and I guess I'm hanging back and I'm still more with the old-fashioned beliefs. She believes in the you create your own reality. And I tried all that for the longest time, and I realized, no, I'm not that powerful. And the people that say in the New Age movement, I am God, I I'm not God, I don't create things, but I can see where they're coming from. Like when they say I am God, each one of us has a little spark of God inside of us, and that's probably what they're saying. And it's like I'm like a drop of water in the ocean, which is God. But no, I had a hard time. I tried, like I said, I read a lot of the books and did some of the exercises, but I ended up going back to just more of the traditional Christianity,
Mm.
which sounds odd because it seems like it would be a conflict with connecting with aliens. But they believe, as far as I understand, they do believe that there is a supreme creator that's intelligent, infinity, and loves everything. And they don't really understand why we fight about religions. That's one of the things they're intrigued about with Earth, is we have these wars and these fights and this hatred over religion, whereas for them it's just accepted that there is a loving creator, and why fight about it?
Okay. Here's a question from Brett from Greensboro, North Carolina. Uh, the question is, why were you chosen to be a contactee?
That's something I've asked for many, many years, especially as a child when I would scream and yell and tell them to go away and leave me alone. And they haven't been real specific, but I do understand they follow certain family lineages. And it was just a couple years ago that one of the beings, Atekana, came to me, and up until recently, I thought she was the ghost of one of my grandmothers because she didn't look the traditional alien. She's pure white and she's translucent. She has the big black eyes, which could have been a hint, but I just thought she was the ghost of one of my grandmothers because she's very gentle and nurturing and loving. But she came to me one night and said, she's a geneticist, and that's when I realized she's not my grandmother. And she's interested in the DNA of Earth because it's so varied and so beautiful and different from any of the other planets. And she looked right at me with those big, monstrous alien eyes and said, and we're interested in you for your DNA, which kind of blew my mind because I'm not anything or anyone unusual that I know of. So, or maybe it's going to be one of my descendants. I have grandchildren now. Maybe it's somebody that's going to be in my family line 300 years from now, because they experience time differently than us. And I've been on ships where I've seen people dressed in period clothing that looks like maybe France from the 1700s or Native Americans from hundreds of years ago, or so I think they go around and they pick up people from various times as well as various places. And so time isn't the same for them. So they might be able to be in contact with one of my descendants from 500 years from now. For all I know, we've even been on the same ship together or even met, but wouldn't know it. So, but they do say they're interested in me for my DNA. So I guess there are certain parts of DNA that they're interested in, or my team is. My team has specifically said they're geneticists and they're working with DNA. I'm sure there's other teams that are working with different projects and different interests.
Do you think it's maybe um, trying to hone in, I guess, just the right? Because a lot of people, that are into this, they understand that there's the hybrids, the hybrid race
Mhm.
being created, and I know you and I have often talked about this too, regarding these different vibrations between their reality and ours. Do you think this is just kind of bridging that gap, by, I guess, trying to create, I guess, a being that can just be right in that cushion?
That makes a lot of sense because I know I have begged them to just come and materialize in my living room so I could call a news crew. It would make things so much easier. And they won't, but I also understand that they can't. It's very, very hard for them because we do vibrate or, move at a different level than their reality. And it's difficult, if not impossible, for them to do that, and also for them to bring us up. So that makes a lot of sense that they're working with making beings that can be like a bridge, like an intermediary between the two that we can see, because so many humans won't believe until there's something tangible that they can see and touch. And then they'll say, okay, now I believe that aliens exist.
Right.
So that could well be what they're doing.
I have this question is from Christy. This my wife. She is helping me out with getting working on these little snippets for these different videos that are already done, and so she looked over your videos and wanted to submit some questions. And I said, well, it wouldn't be fair if I submit all your questions since everyone was only able to submit maybe one or two. So anyway, one of her first questions was, this is that the disaster the aliens were showing you of the Earth coincide with the Nostradamus prophecies of Earth. Do you think the aliens were able to shift the consciousness enough of enough people to change the fate of our planet?
I do believe that because I was really convinced in the 1990s that something really awful was going to happen and it was going to kill a lot of people and cause a lot of destruction. And I believe that's what Nostradamus was talking about also. And it was averted. We did have some bad hurricanes and some bad earthquakes and volcanoes and things like that, but nothing on a massive scale that would. I think the purpose of those was to try to get human consciousness to wake up and see the light, so to say. But I think maybe even with the invention of the internet and more people are able to connect and find things on YouTube that answer their questions and raise their vibration enough or their consciousness, I think we reached a tipping point and we actually went on the right direction. Sometime around 1999, 2000, maybe it was even a period of time up to 2012, because that was a big marker too for a lot of people. But they've stopped showing me any signs of destruction, and they've shown me real positive signs of people working together, small communities, sharing, working together, all for, taking care of the earth a lot better than we did. Seems like we have a long way to go still, but we didn't have a massive disaster, and they're not showing me or telling me that we're going to have one.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Especially, there must have been some kind of shift because almost most stories, especially David Jacobs' books, with doing the regressions and all these things, and of course then Dolores Cannon had
Mm.
more. books that explained more of the backstory of, okay, you got to get deeper below that fear. And there've been videos of being, I guess not videos, but these projections shown to them about all these disasters that should have been happening in
Yes.
that scale, and either have happened, but in a very minor way based on what was predicted, and
Hmm.
or not at all. So some change definitely has occurred.
Yes, it did. I don't know if the aliens intervened, if it was divine intervention, or if humans themselves, actually, enough of us got it, got the idea that we need to be more loving and less hostile and more accepting.
Right,
I think something averted a really bad disaster that could have possibly sent us back to like Stone Age living. They
right.
were giving me images of that, learning how to make a fire and catch my own fish. And that was kind of scary to think that we were going to have to live that way, but I'm not seeing that anymore.
I have the next question is from Daisy, um, Corngrom, Scotland. I'm sorry if I'm butchering these names again of the cities. The question is pretty funny. The question is, what do aliens smell like?
That is a good question because, as far as I know, the aliens' bodies themselves don't seem to have a smell, but the ships definitely do. It's like musty, and it's kind of like sour vegetables. Um, Not really unpleasant, like sauerkraut. I find very unpleasant. It's not quite that bad, but it's kind of like a sour vegetable smell, kind of not real pleasant.
Right. Okay. This one is from Honeysuckle, St. Albans, United Kingdom, and the question is, how can I improve my chances of seeing a UFO?
Uh, I actually have not seen that many. My interactions have been more of a personal nature, but I have seen a few, red and orange glowing lights in the sky. And uh, I think intention, setting your intention is a big one. Again, the free will, you ask them to show themselves and set the intention that I'm going to see this. I'm going to see them, and maybe bring your camera with you when you go outside and be listening for a little hint or a gut feeling. Go outside. My sister has actually done really well with this since she moved out in the country in Arizona. She'll get a feeling, go outside right now. And she'll take her camera and go outside. And she's getting pictures of what she calls cloud ships. They're clouds, but it's pretty obvious that there's a ship hiding behind it, or the shape or an outline of a ship. And I've heard that happens with quite a few people. And with others, it happens at nighttime, where they get a feeling, or just something impels them to go outside and look up in a certain area, and they'll see it. They'll see some orange flashing lights or something. So just keep asking and keep believing, and set the intention that you will see them.
I think this seems to be one of the biggest misconception when it comes to communication with ETs in general. People always expect communication to occur the way we talk,
Mm.
to hear the voices, and and somebody telling you, hey, go do this, go do that, and it's in a weird kind of way, it's more subtle than that, obviously.
Much more
Right. It's
subtle.
like it's the
Yeah.
second you stop giving up stop insisting on the idea that it has to be a weird looking being standing in front of you speaking to you, it kind of changes your perspective and then allows some communication to get through. I think a lot of times we just kind of
Right.
hinder it by blocking it out because we say, well, it can't be. There's nobody here talking to me, so therefore, it's not happening.
Right. I actually had someone write to me and say, I want contact so bad, and I keep getting these synchronicities, but I'm not seeing the aliens. And I said, I believe that your synchronicities are the aliens reaching out to you. Whether you're seeing 11:11 every time you look at the clock, or you're thinking of someone and they call you on the phone, or just synchronicities, that's you're listening to your inner self, and that's who they're talking to, is your inner self. And learn to listen and pay attention to your gut feelings, and things you get, hunches and intuitions. don't just write it off as nonsense. Maybe follow through on it and see what happens.
Right. The next question is from Bontilius, uh, from Truro, United Kingdom. And the question is, why do the Greys call us containers? Not
As
entirely
far as I
sure.
know, I haven't been called a container, but they might say that behind my back.
Right.
um, they they see us as a soul. The one of the biggest gifts they've given me is the I don't fear death at all anymore because they have taken me out of my body. And so I know I exist outside of this body. So they may just see our bodies as containers, or some people call them meat suits. Just it's something that our souls live in order to carry out our life on earth. But we're much more than that. We're souls.
Right. This one is from Gucci, Houston, Texas. I've heard some strange stories that UFOs might be biological. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I whenever I see the Hollywood movies like Star Wars and that, it's like, no, 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 that's not what their spaceships look like at all. The ones I've been in, they are very biological. Some people have said they're living, which it's possible they are because they move and they almost have a breathing, whooshing kind of sound. But I don't know if maybe that's just the oxygen or whatever flowing through them. But they're more like, I would say more like a terrarium or an aquarium than the ships with the long metal hallways like Hollywood shows us, because they use plants for oxygenation, and they use waterfalls. I've seen that being used for purifying their water, and also that, adds humidity to their atmosphere. And they work with nature, whether earth nature or their nature, rather than against it, the way our technology seems to, work in spite of nature, whereas their technology seems to work with nature. So
So,
I,
so are you saying that some of them, was it mainly used, for example, like liquid? Was it mainly used for consumption or for more of a function to help build up the I guess the environment?
Yeah, it seems like the liquid is almost a part of their environment. And there have been instances where I have been forced to breathe in liquid that started when I was really young, being taken to this terrible, scary black swimming pool where they would hold my head underwater. I was like 6 or 7 years old, and until I was drowning, literally, and had to breathe in. But as soon as I breathed in, I was fine. And it was their preparation for me to be on these ships where you're actually breathing a liquid environment. And I have an ex-brother-in-law who works in aerospace, and he asked for me to send him a book, which surprised me because he's very analytical minded. And after he read it, he wrote me and he said, "You do know that astronauts use a form of liquid oxygen, and they're looking into using that for long-term space flight." And no, I didn't know that. And it kind of confirmed my experiences. So their atmosphere is kind of a liquid. Not always, though, not in every ship. Each ship is different. But in some of the ships, you do actually breathe that. And they don't eat or drink. Well, they might drink, but they don't eat the way we do. I don't believe they have digestive systems like we do, but they explain some of them evolved from plants and use more like a photosynthesis process to get their nutritional needs. So that could also be why they need plants and water. Some of it is hard for me to understand.
Right. Yeah, there's the movie Abyss, and there's a little bit of the first time I've ever seen it, and for the longest time I thought it was science fiction. Maybe at that time it was. They might not have developed it at that time, but it's that oxygenated liquid that you basically fill your lungs with it, and you extract
Mhm.
the oxygen from that, which would be kind of weird to be
It
inhaling
was
anything.
terrifying
Yeah.
because I thought I was drowning. I had nightmares of drowning for years and
Right.
years until I realized it's not hurting me. In fact, it's kind of pleasant because it's not dry. Like in the wintertime, we have our heater on and your sinuses get dry and that, but that doesn't happen when you're breathing this liquid atmosphere.
Well, I mean, I think it doesn't matter. Abducting adults, full-on adults, there's still misunderstanding and miscommunication about things. Because I can only imagine my youngest one. He's one, and he got bronchitis, and so he has to. There's that inhaler that they give him, and just helps him breathe better. But he's not terrified of it, but just doesn't like it, and I have to kind of hold him down and then press that spray and have him inhale it at least a few times, and then so that he can get that dose. But I'm thinking back, I'm looking at my wife like he's probably going to remember this as torture or something, and what we're trying to do is help him out, because otherwise he won't
Right.
sit still or won't accept it. So since you mentioned, you said 6, you were 6 when that happened, and
The first time I remember.
right, especially
Yeah.
that act of somebody holding your head underneath, a liquid, which would it's generally a terrifying experience for humans and living on Earth. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting you say you're 1 year old because I think that's kind of how we are compared to the aliens. They know so much more than us and they're so much more advanced and they know this is good for us to learn to do this, but we're fighting and kicking and screaming the whole way. But they're trying to show us that this is a good thing and this will probably be part of our future. So, but they can't really explain it to us, so they just force us sometimes, I guess.
right, I think it's a lot of times. Well, I'm not blaming anyone that's ever been in that situation, but I think um, if people don't easily go along with quote unquote strangers, and
Mhm.
especially if they look strange, use that term, somebody trying to give you some directions, although no matter how good-willed it is, it's still going to make you hesitant. It, it's
Mhm.
definitely a strange thing. But yeah, that we're through with our questions, and I appreciate you taking the time. I hope people watching would get their answers, and if you would like to chat a bit longer, we can. If you got to go, then I certainly do appreciate your time, and we can continue this some other time.
No, I have some free time now.
Good deal.
If you had any questions or
Well, why not use the opportunity to
okay.
maybe cover some things that a lot of times people don't talk about? Well, um, certainly this webcast is not about me, but since some people might know about my experiences, I'll be asking you some questions based on what I've experienced and what you view would have been on this. But I noticed, especially when it comes to screen memories, people have often talked about screen memories and saying that they were imposed on them. And in my personal
Mhm.
experience, is that I found that because of my lack of understanding, and especially for our reality being a certain way, with his own set of rules and our own definitions, sometimes we can't interpret certain things. So a lot of the screen memories are even, I guess, done by ourselves just to have something familiar, something we can
Mhm.
attach to, because I know a lot of times where I thought I was looking at a tree or at a certain being, that's not who they really were, but my mind and the way the human mind works wants to have a enclosed, um, defined object to interact with. So that's what came about, and it wasn't that
Yes.
they were trying to misrepresent themselves or hide something from me. And what do you think about that?
That's a conclusion I've come to not too long ago. I used to think it was them imposing their will on me, making me think I was in a glass elevator in a very tall building. And then, after I woke up and thought about it, I realized that was not a glass elevator, that was a UFO and things like that. But yes, I have come to realize more and more as I know them now, and I know they're actually very gentle and loving and they wouldn't want to forcefully impose things on us unless they absolutely have to. That it probably was my own brain filling in. I was found myself flying through the sky and being able to look down and look around and going way too fast. So I knew it wasn't an airplane. So my brain probably concocted a glass elevator that I remember from being in a tall building in a city once. So yeah, I think a lot of it is our own brains, not so much them. It's just things that are just so far beyond what we can comprehend. Our brains just fill in the gaps.
Right. And so, have you had any contact recently, or anything that occurred to you that you would like to share?
Not as much recently. No, it's like after I wrote the book and got it published and went out and did some talks and did some interviews, it's like they've kind of, I feel
You
like
did
crowed,
your
especially
job.
my, yeah, exactly. My alien, 7 foot tall praying mantis alien who I was always close to ever since I was a little girl. I feel like he's out there working with other people now and connecting with other people. And it's odd because there's no sense of jealousy like there would be with human kind of relationship. I'm happy and I'm excited that he's out working with more people. And I know that I'm still in their consciousness and I still do have, brief interactions in dreams. And actually, what they're showing me more now is dreams of working together with small groups of people, different ages, kind of like the groups that I see assembled inside the ships, different ages, different races, different time periods even, but we're all working together towards a common goal, whether we're helping each other climb up a hill or we're walking along path with donkeys and dogs and chickens and but it's like we're working together and we're going somewhere and we don't talk much, but we know we're all going towards this common goal. And I feel that that's symbolic for what they're doing
Right.
now. Now they're reaching maybe more people and getting us all to be together as kindred spirits, and then we'll work together to some future goal, which they have not told me yet what it is, but I believe that's kind of what the project is right now.
I
They're kind
think,
of
yeah,
gathering together
going along
people.
with what we were talking about earlier, I think that's the best way to look at it, because even like I was saying, even as adult, I find it that um, I don't know. I don't mean to kind of make us humans look so, primitive and dumb, but the way they look at things are way ahead of things. I mean, we're
Yeah.
talking, cosmic movements of and predictions of things. So, when something is happening and, I only see 5 minutes at a time, and so of course, we constantly keep looking, ahead. So what was my contact? Where is this happening? Why did they stop? And so on. But things have their purpose, because it's
Hmm.
in my experience, it was a lot easier when I was by myself living in the woods to have these experiences and learn all that I needed to learn. When it was time to start a family, they were like, "Well, you do, now this is the path I needed to go." Now
Yeah.
recently things have picked up a bit again, but that's the, I guess, to give an explanation to this childish human mind and go, "Well, why'd they leave me? Am I not important enough anymore?" Not that I ever thought, but generally people would think that, everything revolves around what we perceive. It's like, if something is happening, it's happening for a reason. If it's not happening, it's happening for a reason, you know? And so
Exactly.
just to
They
let it be, because, um, because we all know we don't understand everything. So keep insisting that we must get every single part of their plan that's going on? Because
That's right.
sometimes things, can only happen until we've achieved certain things in life and gotten to a certain point, for them for
Hmm.
things to evolve and take the next step. But I
That's
guess that's
true.
where the lessons and patience would come, would be on us to learn in order to evolve. And the thing is, I think it's important to remember. I mean, we're not. This is not a closed group thing that only the chosen ones get to have contact. It's open for everybody. I don't know
Yes.
how, if you ever gotten to that realization or that understanding, but it's all right there for you to know everything you need to know if you're open minded enough. If you're not, and it's not in your path, it's going to be a lot a lot more challenging, to you know to make that transition, to make contact. But if
Hmm.
you are truly willing, they're willing to communicate with anyone that is available.
That's what I think. And yeah, as far as dumb humans, I sometimes feel like they look on us as we might look on a little brain damaged puppy. That's how far beyond they understand things and they see things. We love it and we're going to take care of it and we're going to protect it, but
Right. Well, I
it
think
can't
it's
grasp
I don't mean it in an
concepts.
insulting way. It's just I don't know how else to
No.
describe it. Such a gap between mindset and understanding. That
Yeah.
because if we say, "Oh, they are to us than what we are to the ants," well, human mind thinks, "Oh, so they're tiny, so they can just destroy us." It's like, no, that's not what I'm trying to get at. The
No.
point here is that there's such a vast gap between the understanding, the mental capacity, the power, I guess, for lack of a better word, that
Hmm.
there's no other way to describe it but to use these silly analogies that have their own um you know tagged on belief system that has to be clarified. Like such a
Yeah.
loaded terms, I should say. The same thing with God. God means different things to different people, but everyone depends on who you are, where you're from. You're gonna take a different understanding when hearing that word.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but they see the potential in us. They know that we have the potential. So that's why they have such patience with us and such tolerance and keep on working with us, even though we're probably really difficult to work with most of the time. And we just don't get it. It's like when you're trying to explain a point to someone and they just don't get it. I guess they probably feel that way with us quite a bit. But they don't give up. Then they'll change their tactics and try to explain it in a different way.
Right. Do you would you like to talk about a little bit about your state of mind when you're generally in contact? Is time and space still the same for you? And any other differences? I guess that they are very unique to contact that is different
Mhm.
from what we consider our reality.
Yeah, well, that's why I still call it dreams, even though I know it's not dreams. I mean, I have dreams and they're so different, but this is it's a dream that's just as real as this reality. You see, tu you know, see, hear, taste, touch, and smell just as much as you do here. But it's very peaceful. It's once you get past that primal fear, which is coming from yourself. They don't create the fear. They're trying to approach us as pleasantly as they know how. The fear and the screaming and all that comes from our own primal reactions. But once I got past that, then it was just like
But it took you a long
magical
time
and
from your
peaceful.
point of view, from what I understand.
Years,
How
yeah,
many do,
years,
do you do you think?
decades.
No, decades. Okay.
Because it started when I was 6, as far as I remember, with the screaming and the night terrors, and through my teenage years. And I think it was my late 20s when I finally began thinking this might be real. And then in my 30s, when I realized this is real, and I tried to do a back and forth communication with them. And it took a long time to learn how to do that. So, yeah, it took a long time. But I think they were kind of experimenting with humans in the 50s and 60s with approaching us in the middle of the night and terrifying us. And they've learned from people like me and the hundreds or thousands of others like me that they approached that wasn't the best way. So now when they approach people, they're learning to do it in a more gentle way, in a more acceptable way, like telepathy in your ear or synchronicity or things like that, so that people won't be so traumatized and it won't take them 30 years to accept that this is happening.
Dana, I don't
So,
remember if I ever asked you, but have you heard of Daryl Anka channeling Bashar?
yes, I've watched some of his YouTubes.
Well, what's interesting regarding that, this was years ago now, but it's a clip I remembered very well. He was talking about that even, in their wisdom, they had to change their tactics and approach things differently because of, like you were mentioning earlier in the interview, about agreements being made ahead of time before we were born.
Hmm.
And they never really leaving that reality. To them, that agreement is something they obviously remember consciously, whereas we
Yes.
don't. So they just kind of come down, stop proceeding with the process because we've agreed to it, and but we don't remember. So of course, they kind of, based on what he was saying, they had to adjust their techniques and kind of realize, okay, they kind of have to approach it in a more, I guess, human way to kind of talk
Yeah.
to us, explain things, and and go about that. But I never. It was very interesting because I knew something had changed because my experiences have always been uh, uh, respectful. It was always, there was never
Hmm.
anything that I did not want to do. It was all about mainly them showing a great restraint and patience on their end because of that fear. That it doesn't matter how much you want contact, and I know a lot of people like to uh, fantasize and dream about contact. It's such a weird experience and change in your own consciousness that when that starts happening, you just want to get out of it. You just want to get
Yeah.
out of it, make it stop, because of that transition in these, I guess, between their dimension and ours. There's so much that gets involved in that process of contact, that it's not just, hold out your hand saying hello, nice to meet you.
Right.
So
Right. And yeah, if you're looking around and you see things that just don't make any
right.
sense and your brain is trying desperately to fill in the gaps, and that's
Oh,
exhausting.
that's
So,
one thing that's, I think it's important to understand. Maybe put like a, uh, most of maybe that's something I could do, get in touch with all the different contactees and put a contactee handbook 101 together, something like that, because that's one thing that's very obvious. The brain will cling onto anything that
hmm,
looks remotely familiar to something that'll happen, that you're familiar with in your reality, so that you can apply
yes.
that image, because sometimes these energies are so different that, I think if we just looked at them in this raw filter, that it would just be
Hmm.
a glowing ball of light, with no definite shape or anything like that. It's just my assumption, that immediately when we see something like that, it's like, no, this has to be a person, or fog, or something, to give it a
Hmm.
definition.
Right. Right, like even Croat, the praying mantis. I don't know that that's his real form. That might just be something. I grew up in Nova Scotia when I was really little, and there were praying mantises around, and I liked them, and I remember letting them walk on my hand and stuff. So who knows? Maybe he took that memory out of my brain and made himself look like a praying
Right.
mantis to be more acceptable in my eyes. Maybe that's not what he looks like at all.
Right.
So it's just bizarre.
Right. Well, Donna, thank you. I think this is a good amount of information, and I think we covered quite a spectrum here too. And
Good.
like I said, I certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and answering these questions. And I hope people find these useful. I guess in conclusion, I wanted to just, if you could please tell everyone about your book and a website maybe, and um, and I guess we'll conclude with that.
Okay, my book is published by Ozark Mountain Publishing, which is Dolores Cannon's publisher, which is who the aliens told me to send it to. And it's called From Fear to Love, My Private Journey. And it's basically journals over the years to keep myself sane. When I woke up in the morning and I had all this craziness in my head, I would just write down whether I would make sketches or write down comments or write down full pages of stuff just so that I could get it out of my head so that then I could go on with life and be a mom and an employee and a normal person. And I would stuff them away because I thought it was too weird at the time. And then in about the 90s or the early 2000s, I decided to pull them out and see if I could consolidate them. And they kind of came together pretty well. And that's basically what the book is. I wrote paragraphs and pages linking and what happened in between and that. But a lot of it is just the journal entries over the years and how I processed from extreme fear into now love. I recognize the aliens with love. And my website is DonnaLynnDreams.com. And like I said, it's not really dreams, but I still call them dreams. That's the closest explanation I can come to what happens when I interact with them, especially at night.
All right.
And I'm on Facebook as Donna Lynn Dreams also.
Good deal. All right. Well, Donna, thank you very much, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, nice talking to
All right.
you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.